Please. Supervisor Fisher, would you lead us in an invocation?
Let us pray. Dear Lord Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and for our many blessings in this community in which we live. We also give thanks for this season of the year where we celebrate the birth of a child that changed everything. And we hope that in this season that peace and goodwill to all men will prevail. We ask that you be your blessing on the men and women of our armed services serving throughout the world to protect our freedom. And we ask for your guidance and direction as we work for the citizens of Frederick County. In his holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge of Allegiance, Vice Chairman DeHaven.
Stand, face our flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Adoption of the agenda, Mr. Riley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are no changes.
Is there a motion to adopt?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Motion made by Supervisor DeHaven. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second by Supervisor Lofton. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The agenda is adopted. Consent agenda, Mr. Riley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd offer the following tabs. Tab H, resolution supporting first-day introduction requirements for bills with local fiscal impacts. Tab I, Technology Committee report. Tab J, Technology Committee report of December 4. Tab K, Public Works Committee report. And Tab T, road resolutions.
Questions for Mr. Riley? Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move to approve, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion by Supervisor Fisher. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second by Supervisor Hess. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The consent agenda is approved. Citizen comments? Mr. Riley, did anyone sign up?
One person, Mr. Chairman, Jay Martz.
Come forward, give your name, magisterial district, limit your comments to 3 minutes, please.
Great, thank you, Chairman Schickel. I'm Jay Martz with the Gainsborough District. Chairman Schickel, members of the board, Administrator Riley. I attended the Frederick County Public Works Committee this month. The Space Planning Needs Assessment Summary report for the proposed new county administration building was on the agenda as it is tonight. I was actually surprised that there was little or no discussion as to what to do with the data in this report. It looked like a pretty good report. Simple things like deconflicting the common area requirements listed by each department. Everybody had a kitchenette, a restroom, a conference room, a reception area, storage area, workroom, etc. Additionally, there's another 13,000 square feet of county school shared space. Who and how and when will this detailed planning be accomplished? It wasn't clear in the committee meeting on if anybody was going to do anything with this report other than we have the report, now we've checked a block. Will there be any quality control on the numbers? Or is this just a department wish list? And what I say there is there were many large space increases. Is anyone going to ask for further justification? Why does the registrar need a 141% increase in space? How about the EDC, 144% increase in space? The co-op extension needed 86, and the county attorney said he needed 74% increase in space. But there was no justification in the report other than just a simple checklist. So I would ask that you ask the question, as I am. Will anyone give consideration to alternative proposals? Perhaps there are some components of the county government that could work away from the flagpole. Perhaps this would accomplish the same result at a lower cost to taxpayers. I mean, take a look at the county registrar. Winchester City has their county registrar separate from the flagpole. How about the Virginia Co-op extension? Do they really need to be in the same building? How about joint offices? We have the the Frederick Winchester Environmental Health Office and the Frederick Winchester Service Authority. Should we move them out of the city? Aren't they a joint office? How about the Commonwealth Attorney? Don't we want him to stay close to the Judicial Center? I just ask these is because I think that these questions need to be asked. We shouldn't be in a hurry to move forward with getting out of the county, getting out of this building. It's a nice building. The needs assessment also seems somewhat incomplete. While the county departments provided a comparison of current and future requirements, the school board did not. They only list requested space and have also included a nebulous requirement for future growth for 4,725 square feet. It was my understanding that the requested space was the future need, so I'm unclear on what this is. When I looked at the overall numbers, I saw that the county is currently with 100,000 square feet here, but the cumulative gross county department requirement was only 101,000 square feet. So why are we considering a move? I mean, wouldn't it be easier just to move a few of these departments that I have mentioned out? So anyway, I would think that don't get in a hurry to put the county in more debt. Take this just completed needs assessment as the first step in a process, not the last step. Put it in the hands of the Planning Commission and the Comprehensive Plans and Programs Committee. Allow them to do their work with citizen comments. Thank you.
Anyone else, Mr. Riley?
No, sir.
All right, we'll move on to the minutes of the regular meeting, November 13th, 2013.
Move for approval as submitted, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion by Supervisor DeHaven to approve. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second by Supervisor Fisher. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Minutes of the regular meeting, November 13th, 2013 are approved. Next is a waste to energy presentation by the Frederick Winchester Service Authority Director.
Thank you, gentlemen. I am privileged to be here to present to you a project that has come from the Frederick Winchester Service Authority. We, of course, own all of the wastewater treatment facilities that serve the county and the city. What you're looking at here on the slide is our largest plant, the Opequon facility, which is 12.6 MGD and is an enriched nutrient removal facility. And as we're all faced with, as time goes on, sometimes we have to look at a different way of doing business. We are faced with many challenges, just like everyone else, with regards to higher costs of operations in our facilities due to energy costs, chemical usage and cost itself, sludge production, and now an introduction with the new nutrient removal of supplemental food sources, which are costing us significant amounts of money. What you see in front of you now is a graph of the costs over the last 10 years at the Opequon for landfill usage, electrical service, and chemicals. And you can see the astronomical numbers that we're showing of the increase over those 10 years. Overall, if you put them together, we've seen a 132% increase in our operating expenses at the Opequon. If we do a little bit of projecting, and this also, I will tell you, includes $26.3 million worth of capital expenditures that will have to occur under our business as usual undertaking. And you will see that we expect over the next 20 years to see our O&M costs almost quadruple. We are also looking at 80% of our budget will be consumed by just O&M costs. Right now, we have capital needs that are in our capital improvement program of $26.3 million. It has to do with high-pressure sludge pumping, replacement of our heating and ventilating system, enlarging and expanding our solids handling facility with new buildings and new presses, and also the requirement that we foresee coming to us of emergency standby power, which we presently do not have. When you look at our operation, there are three things that are very much intertied: the electrical use, chemical use, and biosolids that we produce as our, quote, end product, if you'd like to look at it that way. the driving force of all these costs is the biosolids, which we are now presently taking to the landfill on a regular basis every day. So if you look at this, the thing is, if we can control biosolids, the volume that we produce, we will reduce electricity, chemicals, and tipping fees associated with our operations. We also have another great asset in this community, an opportunity to even further expand our services through the local industries, the food industries that we have here. They are subject to the same things of waste production that they must find a disposal method of. Much of this now is leaving the county, is going out of state, being trucked, high transportation costs, and et cetera. And we believe that we have an opportunity with what we're presenting to you to utilize our facilities to provide a very sustainable and long-lasting solution to their waste needs and future expansion of business. When my board first listened to me talk about this about 2.5 years ago, they sent 4 goals for me. And that was that we had to have a fully upgraded facility. The facility now has been there since 1987. The other thing that they said to me is, Jesse, if we're going to invest money, we want a return on that investment. And I said, well, that's kind of unusual for government, but we'll work on it. So we followed the concept, which I'll tell you a little bit more about, of energy performance contracting that has allowed us to show a return on our investment. The other thing we wanted to do is they wanted to see a stabilizing of rates because they have seen the increasing rates city and county customers are paying for service, and they wanted to see something that would stabilize those rates for them in the future. And the only way I could do that is through saving operating costs, as you can see from the budgets that you saw. The other thing was the ability to provide new capabilities for the economic development. I will call it the competitive advantage that we could create with this project. Right now, you're looking at what I proposed to my board, who accepted unanimously, I believe, probably a year ago. And we've been working to solidify the project over that time. We would meet the requirements that were set for replacement of existing equipment, as you see, rebuilt heating and ventilation system, handling of sludge, completion of an aeration system upgrade, and then you'll see all the way to the left the new concept that we're adding to it. It's called anaerobic digestion. What does anaerobic digestion do? It allows me to take the sludges, the high-strength wastes, utilize them to produce methane, and in turn produce electricity, which we would expect at startup of this facility that I would be able to produce 50% of my own electrical needs on site. We will also use heat off of that to take care of heating of digesters and other aspects. You'll also see that we have a food waste and sludge cake receiving center where we would take our sludge and other sludges and get the energy value that is contained in those materials to produce our gas and methane, to produce, finally, electricity through a cogeneration facility that would produce 840 kilowatts. That 840 kilowatts represents the maximum daily demand of our facility. And if, in fact, it grows like we would expect it to grow from our interest from the industrial community, we could someday actually export electricity to the grid. Now I want to give you a summary of that project, and I've circled that $26.3 million. Those are the upgrades that are already on the books that we're going to have to fund in some manner. The other ones you'll see are operational efficiency improvements, which are the normal low-hanging fruits of changing lights, doing things of that nature, building energy controls, and then finally the green energy and resource generation, where we would build cogeneration facilities, food receiving, and we are also planning on doing phosphorus recovery, which right now on the market will get about $400 a metric ton for fertilizer use. Now I talked to you about we're going to save money. Well, our projections are that we will be able to, in the first year of full operation, be able to save almost $1.3 million in operating costs. We would, of course, produce our own electricity, saving about $500,000. We would also eliminate $570,000 of chemical usage by changing to digestion. The other thing you'll see is landfill. Landfill, we would save about $220,000 annually, and that is because through the digestion process, what happens is we reduce the volume of the sludge by almost 40 to 50%. Hence, I'm only taking half that much to the landfill. And I could go on and talk to you about the landfill and what we would save them. Now, I wasn't being short-sighted when I looked at this. You'll also notice in the operating budget that I've added $500,000 of maintenance fees for the new equipment and so forth, and also 3 additional personnel that will probably be needed for operations of this facility. On the economic development side, which I think is very important to the region and to the county, we would then be able to provide a reliable, environmentally sound, and sustaining way of dealing with industrial food waste. One of the biggest ones that we're trying to work with is Kraft Foods. We are very close to a contract with them if, in fact, I get the approval to build this. We would also initially reduce the capital expenses of industries that were moving to town due to the fact that they would be able to start up their plant more quickly and eliminate, as you see there, pretreatment costs that are associated with pretreating their waste at the present time and sending it to us down through the pipeline. And then we would also support future plant expansion. And all I can say to you, the bottom line probably says it best. Let business focus on business and let us focus on waste management. That's what we're best at. Project costs. Of course, project expenses, you will see that we expect operating expenses to go up about $14 million. That has to do with salaries, maintenance, and transportation costs that would be associated with transporting some of this high-strength waste to our facility that we would do. Now, on the other side, there's project savings. Looking at that $1.3 million a year that we could save in operating costs, eliminating chemicals, eliminating landfill fees, and eventually eliminating electric requirements, we would save almost $56 million over the 20-year life cycle of this project. In addition to that, starting now off at what we expect is a very conservative figure for revenue sources outside of our own facility, starting at about $630,000 a year in the first year, we expect over the 20 years that we would take in $38 million worth of new revenue sources. So you can see in the bottom line, we can save money doing it this way. This is comparing it to if we just went on with usual business as it's set up right now. What does this do for you folks, the county? This is Sanitation Authority savings over the 20 years. They would accumulate a savings in excess of $7.2 million, and I would say that that's probably on the low side because of the conservative escalation factors that we've used in evaluating this. The other thing that you'll notice is I circled the first year. That first year, I'm going to be still building with no revenue. So there is a debt service associated with that. And my board has agreed, both for the county and the city, to utilize our reserves to cover that shortfall in the first year. And you can see the brown line would be the business as usual trend of cost allocation and cost over the next 20 years, and the green is what we call the green project resulting line. I want you to note how flat it is. And I could have made the business as usual graph look a lot worse if I had used some of those percentages that you saw in that past 10 years. The great beauty about what we're doing is we're doing an energy savings performance contract, which is much different than what we're all used to of the design, bid, build. This is a partnership between us as the owner, an energy service provider, a consulting engineering firm, and a contractor. I already know who they're going to be if we do this, okay? And what it is, it's done at a fixed cost. In other words, the contract that we sign, if we go ahead with this, which would be for $42.8 million, that's it. No change orders. None of that dealing with, I know many of you have dealt with that, of, well, we start off at 30 and it ends up costing us 35. This is a fixed cost. When we sign that contract, that's all we're going to pay for it. The other thing is the contractor or the energy provider is sharing in risks with the service authority through providing guarantees. Those are performance guarantees of the process we put in, new revenue sources. They're guaranteeing, you see it the first year, that I will bring in $630,000. If I don't, they send me a check. And finally, the annual operating cost savings that you see listed there, those are guaranteed also. So if I shouldn't save $500,000 in electric, the energy provider must make up the difference. I hope I've showed you that we have met the 4 goals that my board set for me in this undertaking. We think it's very innovative, a very serious project that has great potential for future growth in the county and in the city of Winchester. And at that point, that's all I got to say to you. You got any questions?
Questions? Jesse,
Yes,
your first graph there where you showed debt service and O&M costs,
Yes, sir.
operating costs are somewhere about 4.2 million or just over 4 million.
Mm-hmm.
But on the next graph, you only detail about 1.7 of those between electric, landfill, and chemicals.
I'd have to go back to that. Let me see if I can
I
get back.
wonder what the difference of that is. Is that people? I'm looking at your projections of the growth over time, the next 10 years, and I'm having trouble seeing them as aggressively.
Oh, over
as
this one here? This one here? No, these are actually, I do have a growth figures in for the county and the city relative to growth. About 2.3% for the county is where I have it at. That's based on number of new connections per year and everything. But most of it is associated with cost escalations. I can tell you we are getting ready to prepare this year's budget. We're expecting our electrical, just our rate, to go up another 3%. The electric that I showed you back here, 105, I'll tell you what, during that 10 years, my actual consumption of electricity only went up 3%. So it's all in price. And and you can see some of the little downturns that we have. That mainly is associated with the upgrade that we did when we had to put in E&R. We put in more efficient motors, more efficient motor starters, and did some stuff, but there's nothing to the extent that we're undertaking
Trying to
here.
feel better about it with a, if anything, a slight lowering of electric, a flat landfill, and over the last 4 years, some increase in chemicals. I was wondering how the projections looked like they were headed north so quickly.
The chemical
You're saying
cost-
it's usage?
Usage, yes. And in the slide I showed you before of the enhanced nutrient removal, we are putting in additional carbon sources, which we will now get from high-strength waste. We were putting that in order to make the process work to remove that nitrogen and phosphorus that's got to go as a food.
So you still on occasion have an odor. Will the new technology do anything to help that?
Yes, yes. All these digesters are closed-topped facilities. All of the sludge storage that we have has odor control systems on it.
Anyone else have questions?
Well, I
Thanks, sir.
appreciate your time. Thank you.
All right, next is a resolution consenting to the new projects to be undertaken and financed by the Frederick Winchester Service Authority pursuant to the Pekin Water Waste Treatment. You have a resolution. You just had the presentation. What's your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I think if this goes the same way as the power plant at the dump is going, it's probably a worthwhile project.
Sanitary landfill, please.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. So I'd be in favor of something like this. Are you looking for a motion, Mr. Chairman? Is that what you're hoping for?
What's your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion that we approve the resolution.
All right, we have a motion to approve the resolution. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second by Supervisor Hess. Discussion. A lot of money, a lot of savings.
Yeah.
Potentially.
I guess just one, Mr. Chairman. They're financing this themselves?
They will be Frederick Winchester Service Authority bonds. Where's Mr. Correct?
will. We will issue the bond.
Information, as I understand it, on the county will be included in the prospectus, but the county will not be liable for the debt, nor a city as an authority. But authorities come back to the same taxpayers that we do to pay the bill. Any other discussion? Hearing none. Supervisor Wells.
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton.
Aye.
Supervisor DeHaven.
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher.
Aye.
Supervisor Collins.
Aye.
Supervisor Hess.
Aye.
Chairman votes aye, and the resolution is approved. Next is committee appointments. We have a number here as soon as I get to them.
I don't think so.
First, we have an MPO Citizen Advisory Committee. We have 2 slots. Supervisor Lofton contacted me with a candidate this week. Mr. Tibbs put it before you. You can take action or you can defer. I was glad to get a nominee. What is your pleasure? We realize we put it on the desk before you tonight.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, and I apologize for the lateness of that, but he and I have been communicating over the last 6 months to a year about the opportunity to serve on a committee. I finally contacted him when I saw that this was on the agenda tonight, and he'd be interested in serving. Knowing Mr. Hummer for some time, I can attest to the fact that he is very interested in what happened in the county and what I think would make a very valuable member to the Citizens Advisory Committee, and I would move to appoint Joshua E. Hummer to the MPO Citizens Advisory Committee.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
second by Supervisor Wells. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, no. And we are still looking for one more. The chairman solicits your help. Mr. Riley, you don't have any candidates, do you?
We will find someone, sir.
All right. Next is the Planning Commission of Pekin. We have a resignation. Are we ready?
I have nothing at this time.
All right. And then the Community Policy and Management Team, CPMT, we have a resignation, but we are going to get recommendations from the CPMT. So we'll skip that. Extension Leadership Council, Shawnee, are we ready?
No, sir.
Board of Zoning Appeals, Shawnee.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Scott has actually agreed to move or serve on the Extension Leadership Council, so I'll have his paperwork at the next meeting, so I don't have anybody for the Board of Zoning Appeals at this time.
All right. Industrial, do we have a deadline on that one, Mr. Riley?
It's on the Industrial Development Authority or the,
Board of Zoning Appeals.
no, but we do need to be about the business of getting him before the court to be recommended, or whoever you choose.
Okay. Mr. Fisher would probably entertain any help he could get.
Yes, sir.
Industrial Development Authority of Pekin, are we ready?
I'm not ready on that.
Planning Commission, Redbud.
Mr. Chairman, I have contacted both, but I've not heard back from either one of them yet, so I'm not ready.
All right. Extension Leadership Council, Member at Large. It looks like we have a recommendation to reappoint, I believe, and for both people. Is that correct, Mr. Riley?
Yes, sir.
All right, if the board's pleasure, we have a recommendation to reappoint Heather McKay and Ruth Bowden.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move that we recommend reappointment for both.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second, Mr.
Second
Chairman.
by Supervisor Lofton. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Then Heather McKay and Ruth Bowden are reappointed as members at large to the Extension Leadership Council. Historic Resources Advisory Board, Redbud.
Not ready.
All right. Next is a request from the Frederick County School Finance Director, consider fiscal year 14 school construction fund budget adjustment and schedule a public hearing. I believe that was the subject of our work session. Are there any questions on behalf of the board of Mr. Riley or school personnel?
We're asking you to set the public hearing for January 8, 2014.
January
8th.
8th. So the motion should be to schedule a public hearing, correct?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we schedule a public hearing on the resolution as presented, the budget adjustment.
January 8th?
Yes, sir.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Supervisor DeHaven. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The motion carries. The public hearing will be held on January the 8th, 2014. Next is a request from the Commissioner of Revenue for a refund. Mr. Riley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Commissioner requests authorization for the Treasurer to refund American Telephone and Telegraph the amount of $4,536.44 for an adjustment to the 2013 Annual Public Service Corporation Assessment based on information as required from the State Corporation Commission, and this is pursuant to State Code Section 58.13981A. And also within your request should be the verbiage included by the commissioners, from the Commissioner's memorandum, noting it as a supplemental appropriation.
Would you repeat that last part, Mr. Riley?
Yes, if you will recall, we provide the authority for the Finance Director to have a supplemental appropriation to cover the refund request.
Okay, so the motion should be to approve the refund and make an appropriation?
Yes,
Request?
as a supplemental appropriation.
You've heard the request. What's the pleasure of the board?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion by Supervisor Lofton to approve. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
second by Supervisor Wells. Discussion. Hearing none. Supervisor Hess.
Aye.
Supervisor Collins.
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher.
Aye.
Supervisor DeHaven.
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton.
Aye.
Supervisor Wells.
Aye.
Chairman votes aye and the motion passes. Next is a revised resolution for Navy Federal Credit Union. Mr. Riley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the board is aware, you approved a resolution in June with reference to this particular subject matter. We neglected to provide the provision that approves an appropriation of the Governor's Opportunity Fund payment, and it's respectfully requested that you approve that resolution, which is an amount of $250,000 from the Governor's Opportunity Fund.
Questions of Mr. Riley? Mr. Riley, I assume that the resolution, since it speaks to does that speak to 250 county and 250 governor's operation or governor's opportunity, or is that one and the same?
Just the Governor's Opportunity Fund money. Because we did the action on the county's appropriation already.
So the fact that it's in the resolution is a little redundant?
Yes.
Okay. Not doing another 250?
No.
Okay. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the resolution be adopted.
We have a motion to approve the resolution. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second by Supervisor Fisher. Discussion. Hearing none. Supervisor Wells.
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton.
Aye.
Supervisor DeHaven.
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher.
Aye.
Supervisor Collins.
Aye.
Supervisor Hess.
Aye.
Chairman votes aye and the motion passes. Now we're down to the Finance Committee report. Supervisor DeHaven.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Finance Committee met on November 20th at 8 a.m. Item number 1 and item number 3, request of the sheriff for general fund supplemental appropriations were approved under consent agenda, and I would so move.
We have a motion for items 1 and 3 to be on consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Supervisor Lofton. Discussion. Hearing none. Supervisor Hess.
Aye.
Supervisor Collins.
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher.
Aye.
Supervisor DeHaven.
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton.
Aye.
Supervisor Wells.
Aye.
Chairman votes aye and the motion passes.
Item number 2 was the sheriff's request for general fund supplemental appropriation in the amount of $18,346.70. This amount represents proceeds from the public auction to be used to purchase mobile radios. The committee recommends approval, Mr. Chairman, and I so move.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second by Supervisor Collins. Discussion. Hearing none. Supervisor Hess.
Aye.
Supervisor Collins.
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher.
Aye.
Supervisor DeHaven.
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton.
Aye.
Supervisor Wells.
Aye.
Chairman votes aye and the motion passes.
Item number 4 is the sheriff requested general fund supplemental appropriation in the amount of $11,401.88. This amount represents state reimbursements due to the county for prisoner extraditions. No local funds are required. The committee recommends approval, and I so move.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Supervisor Wells. Discussion. Hearing none. Supervisor Wells.
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton.
Aye.
Supervisor DeHaven.
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher.
Aye.
Supervisor Collins.
Aye.
Supervisor Hess.
Aye.
Chairman votes aye and the motion passes.
Item number 5 is the Director of Public Works requested general fund supplemental appropriation in the amount of $15,000. This amount represents funds required to retain the part-time receptionist position in the Building Inspections Department. The revenue is currently exceeding projections. The committee recommends approval, and I so move.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second by Supervisor Fisher. Discussion. Hearing none. Supervisor Hess.
Aye.
Supervisor Collins.
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher.
Aye.
Supervisor DeHaven.
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton.
Aye.
Supervisor Wells.
Aye.
Chairman votes aye and the motion passes.
Item number 6 is the Winchester Regional Airport Director request an airport fund supplemental appropriation in the amount of $2,669.96. This amount represents an insurance reimbursement for roof damage of the FBO building. The committee recommends approval, and I so move.
A motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second by Supervisor Fisher. Discussion. Hearing none. Supervisor Wells.
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton.
Aye.
Supervisor DeHaven.
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher.
Aye.
Supervisor Collins.
Aye.
Supervisor Hess.
Aye.
Chairman votes aye and the motion passes.
The Finance Committee discussed the potential donation from the Redbud Run proffers for historic preservation to the Shenandoah Valley Battlefields Foundation, with a stipulation that it be a contributing portion of the final payment that retires the debt on that property. The committee recommends designating $50,000 from the Redbud Historical Proffers for the final debt payment on the Huntsbury property, and I so move.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Supervisor Wells. Discussion. Hearing none. Supervisor Hess.
Aye.
Supervisor Collins.
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher.
Aye.
Supervisor DeHaven.
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton.
Aye.
Supervisor Wells.
Aye.
Chairman votes aye and the motion passes.
That is the end of our required, our action items, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Next, we'll move on to the Transportation Committee.
I'm working on that one. This thing doesn't move fast enough. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Transportation Committee met on October the 28th at 8:30 a.m. There was one action item, and that was the request for a speed study on Cedar Creek grade. The committee considered VDOT's request for concurrence to perform a speed study for Cedar Creek grade between Route 37 and the City of Winchester boundary. Staff also attached a map. The committee considered this item and noted the heavy traffic flows, the entrance configurations, and the geometrics of the area. And the committee recommends approval, and I would so move.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second by Supervisor Collins. Discussion. There are no costs. Does the state bear the cost?
State bears the cost, but it does come out of our collective funding for the year.
Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes.
That concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Next is public hearing, 12-month outdoor festival permit request of Belle Grove Plantation pursuant to Frederick County Code, Chapter 86, Festivals. Mr. Riley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a request by Belle Grove to obtain a 12-month outdoor festival permit for Belle Grove Plantation. All events to be held on the grounds of Belle Grove Plantation, 336 Belle Grove Road, Middletown, Virginia. The property is owned by the National Trust for Historic Preservation.
Questions to Mr. Riley, and is someone here from Belle Grove who'd like to speak?
Thank
I didn't forget
you,
you
Chairman.
this time.
Pardon?
I didn't forget you this time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Board. Kristen Lays, the Executive Director of Belle Grove Plantation. I believe we've had a good track record of safe and successful events at Belle Grove. We are requesting this permit for festivals we've held in the past and that we'll be holding again this year. Be happy to answer any questions you have.
Any questions? Thank you. We'll now conduct a public hearing to consider a 12-month outdoor festival permit request of Belle Grove Plantation pursuant to the Frederick County Code, Chapter 86, Festivals, Section 86.3. All events to be held on the grounds of the Belle Grove Plantation, 336 Belle Grove Road, Middletown, Virginia, property owned by the National Trust for Historic Preservation. Is there anyone here who would like to speak either for or against this 12-month outdoor festival permit? If so, please come forward, give your name, magisterial district, limit your comments to 3 minutes, please. Anyone? Seeing no one, will close the public hearing.
Beck Creek, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. This lady is actually correct. She has a great track record up there at Belle Grove. I see no reason why there should be any different. They do a great job with all their events, so I would move for approval of the application for an outdoor festival permit for the 12-month period.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Supervisor Lofton and a second by Supervisor Wells. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize. Should that state that is for the period of January through December of 2014?
Mr. Riley?
That is correct.
Okay.
Second, concur. Supervisor Wells?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing none. Supervisor Hess?
Aye.
Supervisor Collins?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor DeHaven?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the outdoor festival permit is approved. Next on the agenda is a public hearing, a height waiver request for Carmoose Lime and Stone Incorporated, request from Lawson and Silex PLC on behalf of Carmoose Lime and Stone Incorporated. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As you stated, this is a request for a height waiver on behalf of Carmoose Lime and Stone to allow the construction of a kiln at the existing Clearbrook Quarry located off Quarry Lane in the Stonewall Magisterial District. Now, the waiver is for the construction of a kiln that exceeds the 45-foot EM extractive manufacturing height maximum, and the applicant has requested the board to waive the height up to 200 feet. The Planning Commission held a public hearing for this waiver on December 4th. The Commission recommended approval of the height waiver for the kiln with the condition that the kiln have what is called the skin. Now, these are the architectural renderings that were included in your agenda. It shows the kiln with the skin, which is the gray part at the top, as well as some photographs of existing structures located in other areas. And this is just a simulation of what it would look like from a distance. So tonight, staff is seeking a decision from the board on this requested height waiver for the construction of a kiln up to 200 feet in height. And I would note that without the waiver, the kiln would not be able to exceed the 45-foot EM district maximum. Staff would recommend that any decisions include the requirement for the skin on the kiln. So with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions that you may have. Representatives are here on behalf of the application, and Mr. Patrick Barker is also here from the EDC if you have any questions for him. Thank you.
Questions of staff?
Would that include, well, I have a question from Mr. Barker.
Okay. None for staff? All right, did the applicant wish to speak first? Well, Mr. Barker, maybe since you're up. Wanted to speak second.
Just wondering what sort of benefit, particular economic benefit, this project would bring to the county, either in terms of increased tax revenue or increased jobs?
Sure. The project, as we know right now, it intends to make an investment of about $49.2 million. For you guys, for over 5 years, that means about $1.6 million in new revenue to you guys, which is an average of about $323,000 a year once it's fully up and running. New jobs on the project supposed to be about 25 jobs at an average wage of about $43,000, which is fairly consistent with our average wage for the whole area.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions for Mr. Barker? Thanks, sir. Did the applicant wish to speak?
Yes. Hello, Mr. Chairman, members of the Board of Supervisors. My name's Jim Bonham. I'm the Area Operations Manager at Carmoose Lime and Stone for this region. As you all know, we've been before you with this request last month, and I don't know that we need to go over a huge amount of information. I do want to cover a couple of points. This kiln is new technology, and as Patrick said, it brings a lot of opportunity to the county, both in revenues and in people. The kiln is being constructed at considerable cost, and we want to remind everyone here, not only did Frederick County incentivize us, but the Commonwealth of Virginia did as well. And so this is the first waiver request of this kind for a project in Frederick County. The purpose of the waiver is to incentivize industrial and extractive manufacturing property owners to install mitigating elements in the event they make a request to install a structure that is taller than what is allowed by right in those zones. In this case, the height waiver is for 200 feet. The actual kiln structure is going to be just a hair over 193 feet. I'm sure one of my engineers could tell me it's probably 193 2/3. Underneath the structure of the kiln itself is a combination of silos and smokestacks. And essentially, the limestone is delivered mechanically to the top of that structure, and gravity takes over from there and simply feeds to the different silos and bins under that structure. And by enclosing the upper portion of the kiln, the view shed for the surrounding neighbors will be significantly improved, especially at night. That equipment without the skin will have to be lit up, and the skin simply allows us to block the light
from any view shed internally and externally to the plant. And I want to cover, let's see, what else is in here. The other mitigating element that this skin offers is also some noise reduction. As you know, people know, when limestone hits metal, it makes some noise. So that skin will also enable us to protect our neighbors from that as well. It's important to point out that because under county ordinances, silos and smokestacks are exempt from the height ordinance, and there are existing structures in the immediate vicinity. If anyone's been driven up there north on 81, when you look off to the right, there's a smokestack in the air. That smokestack currently is 185 feet. Again, we're asking for 200. The actual height is 193, so the difference is about 8 feet from what you see today. And as you saw from the drawings in there, the kiln is located, I wanted to point out, it was gone over pretty quickly, but we're greater than 1,000 feet where those structures are from the property boundary. And from the closest property boundaries, the properties that we are adjacent to are also zoned EM, owned by Frederick Land Company. And so we're significantly, there's a significant buffer between the kiln and any of the adjacent property owners. Just want to point that out. I'm happy to answer any questions you all might have, and that's all I have to say.
Questions? Supervisor Lofton.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Bottom, I think, has already answered one. That was the highest structure you have currently on the property. That's your smokestack?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Secondly, I noticed in the material it says construction of a kiln, but as I look at your schematic, it actually shows two. Now, is that, how are we phrasing that? Those two are one or were two?
They're independent. It's as if, it's just like the drawing showed, they're two independent structures that are side by side.
Because so we're actually, the waiver would be for constructing two up to 200 feet.
Yes.
And they're, as shown in the schematic, as you said, side by side.
Yes.
Okay.
Other questions? Should the board look favorably upon this request, staff's recommendation on the skin meets with acceptance by the applicants?
Yes.
Okay. No other questions, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Now conduct a public hearing on a height waiver request for Carmoose Lime and Stone Incorporated. Request from Lawson and Sinek PLC on behalf of Carmoose Lime and Stone Incorporated to allow the construction of a 200-foot tall kiln at the existing Clearbrook Quarry located off of Quarry Lane in the Stonewall Magisterial District. Property is identified by property identification number 33-A-144. Is there anyone here who would like to speak either for or against this height waiver request? If so, please come forward, give your name, magisterial district, and limit your comments to 3 minutes, please.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and fellow supervisors. My name is Mark Regan, and I reside in the Stonewall District. Across Route 11 from Carmuse is Stonewall Elementary School. There are over 500 students attending this school. 25 of them have asthma. There are adults at the school who also suffer from asthma as well. I'm shocked that no parents of Stonewall Elementary were notified by the school board about this application or the previous application in 2011 for the expansion of the quarry. Now, after I've given out bonuses and raises to school employees, which I would expect them to watch over the safety of all our children of Stonewall, I would have hoped to hear from the school board to speak up against this application or to speak at all tonight. On December 2nd, Carmuse invited us to a meeting just 2 days before the Planning Commission meeting. I have given handouts to the supervisor showing literature that was given to a very small number of Clearbrook residents. To me, this literature is misleading. Carmuse states the waiver will allow Carmuse to put attractive siding on the kiln. It did not mention anything about allowing Carmuse to build these kilns. Whereas the actual application waiver submitted to the county is asking to allow construction of a new kiln. Actually, I have to question the validity of the current application at all due to the wording "new kiln" singular instead of 2 kilns. And there's also no adjoining property owners list for the public to review on the application that I come up with. Because of activity like this, I have to question the safety of kiln emissions, dust emissions, and blasting. In fact, on December 5th, air quality monitor located in Clearbrook, operated by the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality, reported air quality was the highest in this big city of Clearbrook than anywhere else in the state of Virginia. Tonight, we call on the county to motion for denial of this application in order to give time for Carmu's to meet with all citizens who are within sight, the sound and blasting and dust emissions and kiln emission of this limestone facility, to buy out or relocate the residents, as well as relocate Stonewall Elementary to a location out of harm's way. I call on my fellow supervisors to motion for denial and unanimously vote for denial by all my fellow supervisors of this application. Tonight you can vote for this, or you can vote for this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and fellow supervisors. Have a good evening.
Anyone else? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing. Mr. Riley, planning staff, help me out with this. A kiln, a skin, 2 kilns, two skins. Are we properly advertised? What is the motion? What are we approving? What was requested? I see in the material that was handed out by the applicant that it refers to a kiln. Maybe we need him to come up and help us understand what's being asked versus what we advertise versus what we vote on. Could you come up? What do we have here? What is the request?
We have a request for height waiver, 200 feet on the 2 kilns that are proposed for construction.
2 kilns?
Yes.
Okay. Sort of close together.
Yeah, they're extremely close together, side by side.
Are we appropriate in what we've advertised, Mr. Riley?
I would defer to Mr. Williams.
Because even in the literature that you passed out at the CISA meeting, it says a kiln. So I want to be clean here.
Mr. Chairman, that seems to be the first time it's been identified as 2 kilns. It appears that the materials that were submitted with the application included the picture that's been, or the drawing that's been shown. It's labeled as kiln with skin, but the applicant does seem to indicate it as 2 kilns, and I believe it was advertised as 1. So I think that does call into question the advertising.
So where does that leave us?
Appear it would need to be re-advertised.
Pardon me?
It would appear it would need to be re-advertised.
Could you act on 1 kiln tonight and 1 kiln at another meeting?
Yes.
Does that do the applicant any service?
It would be preferable if we could vote on both. I understand.
Would you prefer they both be decided at one time? That doesn't appear to be tonight.
Then I would say we would take one and advertise for the other.
Okay, thanks, sir.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, before Mr. Bottom leaves, I know your company hasn't owned it for its life, but do you know how long that quarry and that kiln have been there?
I want to say in the neighborhood of 1956, 1957 is when it was originally installed. That kiln there was installed in 1996. That operation's been in operation since the mid-50s.
And the impact upon your operation if, in fact, this height waiver is not granted? We've heard about the financial impact of the jobs, et cetera.
That would be significant. If it stood to reason that we couldn't build them as a result of the ordinance, it would be devastating. I'll say this, though. It is simply a silo. If we do not have the opportunity to put the siding on the silo, we would still move forward to ask for a determination from the county that they are indeed silos and that they would be outside of that height restriction.
Because as I understand it, there are no height restriction on silos?
That's correct.
To my knowledge, I don't believe so, not in EM. Silos and stacks are exempt from the 45-foot height.
So if these are silos, why are we having a public hearing? If there's no height restriction on silos, and we're indicating that these are silos, not operational.
From staff's review of the structure, the primary use is the kiln, which is located at the top. The kiln is not exempt from the ordinance, so with or without the skin, county staff would require the height waiver for the structure.
The primary structure is a kiln? Is it a combination structure, kiln, silo?
It's all one.
It's all one.
It's just a big steel tube.
What kind of process goes on in this silo?
You put stone in the top and stone comes out of the bottom, and there's heat applied in the bottom of the kiln, in the bottom of the silo.
Okay, thank you.
I appreciate it. If
One of the questions that came up was about the air quality. And what the air quality that the gentleman brought up, I'm assuming those are on test runs on the situation as it now exists with the equipment you're presently using. Am I correct?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
And I have not seen this stuff, but I'm just saying EPA or someone has done air analysis studies and on the existing air that's there now, that's being done, of course, based on what you're using. Is that kiln that you're using now, is that going to stay in production?
No, that kiln that's there today is shuttered due to economic reasons that we haven't been able to recover from 08, 09.
Now, the kiln silo, the two that you're requesting to build at this height, what does that have? And I know you gave some backup on it last time, but I just want to go back through that again because we're talking about the school that's next door and houses that are around. Air quality versus what you have now. Air quality that will be better because you're using better equipment, better scrubbers, and all those different things?
Yes, in fact, right now, we're working with the state DEQ to obtain an air permit for the new operation. And, through the state, the state's not going to issue a permit unless it meets the existing surrounding ambient air quality standards.
So what I'm hearing is that the operation as you now have it, according to the gentleman I heard, and that's what I'm going on, has an air quality that's one of the highest in the area. No, you don't know that.
I don't know what the surrounding.
Let's assume that's the case, and let's just say that's going to be shut down. You have a new facility going in. But prior to you building that facility, you have to prove to DEQ that this is going to maintain a air quality less than what we have now, better than what we have now.
Yes.
Extremely better than what we have now.
In fact, on a unit basis,
and if you don't do that, and the testing will take place, I would say, throughout the year, I don't know how quarterly or whatever, those tests are open to the public. I mean, the information will be open to the public. So if you don't, if you build this structure and it doesn't meet that, then the structure gets shut down?
Yes, yes, essentially. There's things that happen and occur between the DEQ.
I'm not as concerned about the height as I am about the size and the air quality and the noise factor and all those things that take place by building a larger facility. If I knew that the height was fine, the height, 200 feet, okay, that's 75 feet more than what you are, or whatever, 125. But my concern is it will be a better cleaner, less intrusive, less noisy operation than what you have now?
It will be with the siding. But by all means, the technology is state of the art. But by all means, it's proven in other places within our company, around the world. It is a more fuel efficient, and more importantly, it has less emissions from an air quality standpoint. And more importantly, with the ability to put the siding on it, it will have next to zero noise emissions from that part of the operation, and it will have zero light emissions as a result of it being enclosed, which is even more important.
If this board approves this and you now have the approval to build one, you build the one, is it contingent that you have to, when you do this, you want to build two together?
Yes, side by side. It's been the plan that's been presented.
I've been looking at this and being called one, and now we're two. And I guess my personal feeling is that I'd really like to see one operate, but we'll see. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just provide one clarification real fast. From a staff perspective, we viewed, and they're calling it two tonight, and that's the first time we've heard two, but it's the same drawings that we have reviewed from an engineering perspective as well as site plan.
I understand that, but when you tell me it's one, I'm thinking one. I understand what you're saying.
Because we called it one. We thought it was one unit, the way everything that's been presented to us.
Two houses together and call them one.
Everything we have indicates it's a single structure.
Supervisor Fisher.
Well, I have to be honest, when I looked at this, I considered this one structure. It appears that the structure is totally built together. It doesn't look like two separate units. The other thing, and maybe I can't tell from the details, but is there a single feed of raw product to the top, or
Yes.
Well, see, that's what I thought. It's a single feed that's feeding
two kilns.
What they're calling two kilns, but I looked at it as one structure. You got a single feed that splits up in two stages. So, Mr. Williams.
I think you're being asked to reconsider, Mr. Williams.
If I might ask a question, can it operate as just one or two, or does it have to be built the way we see it in the drawing, or could it be built as just one segment of it?
I'm not sure I understand.
It's two kilns.
With the feed system, could you build just one portion of this economically, or do both kilns have to be built to support the feed system that goes to it?
I would say, you could do just about anything. You can build one. I can tell you economically, it doesn't work to just build one.
So everything that was presented to us was presented as two kilns, and then roughly referred to as a kiln, and is before us. And I guess I'm just looking for some counsel. Do we have to go back to the advertisement, or can we move forward here? And your first answer was you thought we'd have to re-advertise, but some of the arguments are convincing that there's reasonableness in considering it as one unit, even though it's two kilns.
Perhaps it's a tad like an engine with cylinders, and it's really one engine. It has two cylinders, and it was advertised as an engine. Maybe we can get there that way and say the advertising is sufficient.
Mr. Chairman, it appears, I agree with Mr. Fisher, it appears it's an integrated structure, so you could conceive it as one structure, but I was just kind of noting that on the plan, in fact, on the schematic shows kiln 1, kiln 2, but you're speaking of them as a whole, not as two separate entities.
It appears to me that if you were to build, quote, one unit, you have to totally redesign the structure because it won't work. This thing is built with a single feed, and it's tied into the two sides, so it's, again, I just assumed that it was all one.
Mr. Williams, could the board be so liberal as to insert the word unit after kiln and not have to re-advertise it, and to properly match up what we've seen, what we've been told, to clarify that a kiln doesn't mean one kiln, it means a kiln unit.
Kiln unit. I think that's fair, Mr. Chairman. Yes.
If we are to dispose of it tonight, I would recommend that the motion maker, either in approval or denial, add the word unit after kiln as a suggestion. Is that a proper description of the pictures you've given us?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I apologize I didn't bring the issue up. People said kilns, and they said kiln, and I just wanted to know what we were doing.
It's better to get it right today.
Mr. Chairman, this is the kiln unit we've been discussing for months and months. I think that it's a very positive application. It has a way better benefit than any potential denial or any potential distraction. And I would recommend that we grant the height waiver request for this kiln unit.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second by Supervisor Fisher. Discussion. Hearing none. Supervisor Wells.
No.
Supervisor Lofton.
Aye.
Supervisor DeHaven.
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher.
Aye.
Supervisor Collins.
Aye.
Supervisor Hess.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion passes. The waiver is approved for the kiln unit. Next is a public hearing on rezoning 03-13 Madison Village, presented by Patton Harris Painter Lewis, PLC. My apologies. Go ahead, staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This rezoning request for Madison Village is a request to rezone 51.26 acres from RA, rural areas, to a combination of 46 acres of RP, which is the Residential Performance District, and 5 acres of B2, which is the Business General District. Proffers are associated with the request, and the Generalized Development Plan, of course, is in your package. This is within the Shawnee Magisterial District. On the screen to your left is a location map of the property, highlighted with the black thick line. Immediately to the north is the property known as the Russell 150 project, and of course you see 522 running along the eastern portion of the property. Across 522 we have a lot of existing residentially zoned and developed land. You'll see that in the corner of the property, the northeast corner, there are two very small commercial properties that were zoned B2 back in 2005-2006 timeframe. The generalized development plan that's on the screen to your left, again, illustrates how the project is laid out with regards to the proposed commercial land uses and the proposed residential areas. Of course, it also includes some of the improvements that are proffered, in particular the road infrastructure that provides a connection from Route 522 through the property to the west to connect with that property in the future, and an additional extension to the south to connect with property in the south, which is just north of the Freedom Manor project that, again, was rezoned in the 2000s. If we look a little closer with the generalized development plan to the entrance, you can see that an additional road connection has been provided through Proffer 4E to the Russell 150 project to the north, property to the north. The importance of that and the improvements that are identified are that the phasing of those improvements, access and to the north, will also provide access to parcels 14 and 15, the two commercial properties I mentioned, prior to any occupancy of any component of this request, so again, at the onset of the project. So that's the generalized development plan that supports the rezoning request. Now, the Planning Commission, they recommended approval of the request. They had previously tabled it for 90 days to work out a couple of items. The applicant addressed those items, providing a minimum number of units as well as a maximum, and ensuring the timing of the road connections to those to the west and to the south that I pointed out. It also provided the applicant and the adjacent property owner the opportunity to meet to try and come up with an agreement. There was one issue regarding potential right-of-way or construction easements needed to facilitate the entrance into this development. the time the Planning Commission recommended approval, it was recognized that the parties had been meeting, but no agreement was in place at that time. It's believed that that is something that could occur prior to the development obviously occurring. So the RP and B2 zoning that is being requested is consistent with the county's comprehensive plan. More recently, the Sensney Eastern Frederick urban area plan that was approved a year ago designated again this for residential with a little bit of commercial on the borders. The potential impacts associated with the request have been addressed through the proffer statements, including those additional items that were pointed out through the Planning Commission's review. With that, Mr. Chairman, the Planning Commission recommended approval, so we're seeking the Board of Supervisors' decision this evening following a public hearing on this item. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the Board of Supervisors may have. And Mr. John Lewis is here this evening, along with Ben Butler, representing the application.
Questions of staff? Supervisor Fisher.
On the, I guess it's the GDP interparcel connection to the south. There's one place back on the transportation place, it's just a clarification. The tax map is 64A 20 or 21. On this, it's 21, and on the earlier aerial site, it says 20. One refers to one and the other doesn't exist. Just a clarification point.
What's it say on that?
I believe 21 is correct on the GDP.
Okay.
There is a difference, and we'll certainly confirm that that is ultimately correct. Obviously, we know where the location for that connection.
You know what he's talking about?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then the aerial is deemed to be incorrect.
We'll need to check on that because there is a conflict between the two numbers. I think it's very clear, though, where the location of the connection would be.
Without taking the time to look, what does the proffer statement refer to?
The generalized development plan refers to 21, as you can see on the screen to your left. Excuse me, let me just zoom on in there if I may. And that gets us to the location that we're talking about.
Anything else? Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Does the applicant or the applicant's representatives wish to speak?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Chairman and members of the board, I'm John Lewis with Painter Lewis, PLC. Thank you. And I'm here with Ben.
My apologies.
I used to work for him, but I'm here with Ben Butler and Mr. David Madison. We're here to represent the project tonight. I'd just like to give a little background on this project. It's been nearly 2 years since we met with planning staff to scope out a rezoning for this parcel. And we spent a good portion of 2012 seeking to understand what the vision of the comprehensive plan is for this parcel and the surrounding area. At that time, the zoning regulations were not quite in step with the comprehensive plan, but draft regulations existed that would, when adopted, resolve that issue. At the end of 2012, the draft regulations still hadn't been adopted. So we went ahead and submitted a rezoning application under the then current regs. Naturally, as soon as we put our application in and sent it to the agencies, the new regulations were adopted. So we withdrew that application and we reworked a new application in step with the comprehensive plan, and we submitted that earlier this year. So over the past 2 years, we've worked to address the impacts of this project, and we tried to ensure the conformance with the comprehensive plan. The final product of this project will bring the work of the planning staff, the planning commission, members of the development community, and this board to fruition. And let me just describe some of the features that we're talking about on this project. Regarding the environment, the site is well suited for construction activities. The topography of the majority of the site is gently rolling. Subgrade is shale and will be readily transformed to accommodate the necessary infrastructure. Disturbance to the existing streams, the pond, woodlands, steep slopes and wetlands will be minimal and well within the allowable limits as defined by the zoning ordinance. Regarding the commercial land set-aside that we're proposing, it's the new regulations that made it feasible to reserve this 5 acres. So we're reserving 5 acres along Route 522, and this acreage will abut and will complement the 1 acre of existing B2. Regarding the transportation, the county's transportation plan is specific in identifying the future area road network. Route 522 is a minor arterial road which will eventually be paralleled by a major collector road located just to the east of 81. I believe that's going to be called Warrior Drive. These 2 roads will be connected by an east-west collector road, a portion of which will be constructed with this project. In addition, public roads will connect to the north to what is commonly known as the Russell 150, and to the south towards Paper Mill Road, identified as tax map 64A21. I'm pretty sure that's right. In addition, bicycle and pedestrian facilities will be incorporated along with these roads. Regarding the residential development, in order to ensure compliance with the comprehensive plan, a minimum residential density has been proffered. At the same time, the proffers provide for the development of a variety of housing types, including apartments, townhouses, single-family, and age-restricted housing. We've been careful to ensure that impacts to services provided by the county as a result of this project have been mitigated by monetary contributions based on the current development impact model. In addition, a substantial sum will be spent on recreational facilities within the project itself based on guidelines provided by Parks and Recreation Department. So this project conforms to comprehensive plan. The application addresses the impacts. There hasn't been much in the way of public opposition to the project itself, and the Planning Commission supports it. And with that, we would like to move forward with addressing the other issues, engineering, permitting, design challenges that are normally associated with a project of this type. And I'd ask for a favorable approval from you all tonight. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Questions?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Lewis, your first roundabout west of 522, do you know the distance between there and 522 intersection?
It's about 280 feet.
It appears there's going to be a lot of traffic in and out of this place. I don't know how you score a roundabout as far as handling traffic, but that seems like a short distance for all the traffic that's going to be using that roundabout. And they basically, I don't think people have found out how to do those yet, so it comes to 4-way stop. So I'm worried about queuing coming off 522 up to that roundabout.
I've actually asked that question of VDOT, and they concur that this particular roundabout and this type of traffic will work with that distance.
Okay.
And that's one of the challenges we have to go through. I mean, we haven't designed this thing. We haven't gotten anything approved by VDOT. We've just had meetings. So that's the next step in this process.
Thank you.
Questions? When I look at your north-south road, interior road, and I look west of it, part of me says, looks like they're not going to develop that part of the parcel, but then I guess it is 300 feet. Do you know what the plans are? Will that have structures on it?
To the west of that road?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, because it looked like it hugged the boundary.
We actually have townhouses designed for that. There's a little more room there than it appears.
Okay. That keeps me from having the wrong idea. Thank you. Other questions? Anybody else from your group?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, other members of the board, my name is Benjamin Butler. I'm an attorney for Madison 2. And two items that were raised after talking to the Shawnee District representative. I would and I think this is allowed under the Virginia Code. I rely on your counsel to agree with me on this, but under 15.2-2303, and I read, it says the governing body may also accept amended proffers once the public hearing has begun if the amended proffers do not materially affect the overall proposal. And what I would submit is this, under Section 4, I thought it was implicit in the Section 4 of the proffers that are there, but Madison 2, the owner would submit this: owner must obtain adequate access to public roads as approved by VDOT for the rezoned parcel. That would be the first amendment that I would offer for the owner. The second one would be added to Section 11, the Property Owners Association, and at the end of the proffers there on 11, it would state this: the owner agrees to fund the POA in a sum of $5,000 in order to facilitate the POA's operating costs upon transfer of control of the POA from the developer to the third-party property owners. Now, the reason for that one is, and I totally agree with the supervisor on this, too often these POAs, or homeowners associations as they're known, are set up, but they don't have the physical well-being when they start out, and so they never really get off the ground, and they pose problems. So that's why this is submitted. And if I might tender this amendment to the clerk to be added to the proffers that are already in there, I would so submit. I have them here, in fact.
Where did Mr. Ruddy go? If staff would take a moment while we're here to see if said verbally is what's represented in writing, put it bluntly.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And if there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Mr. Butler. Supervisor Lofton. I'm still trying to find number 4, by the way.
Mr. Butler, hopefully you can answer this, but it appears that the owner is working with Mr., is it Shepherd?
Yes, certainly,
Owns
yes.
those 2 parcels?
The owner of the adjacent parcel to the immediate, in the...
Under number 5, your property number 5.
The northeast corner, right.
Yes. I think I saw from Mr. Ruddy's slide that they had not come to an agreement yet.
We're close, I think, but Mr. Shepherd can answer that. I mean, we are in negotiation and continue, even after tonight, would hope that we would be able to continue negotiations. I think it's more a question of timing, when things are going to be done for Mr. Shepherd rather than whether they are going to be done. Mr. Shepherd would like them sooner. We would like them later once VDOT makes certain determinations about where the roads are going to be, construction of the road, et cetera. So in concept, the owner doesn't have the power of eminent domain. We need, let me just say this, the preferable way is to have an entrance over the Shepherd property, or with Mr., not over the Shepherd property, but in the front of the Shepherd property and then up the side. But that having been said, there are other landowners adjacent that would provide access to this property. Some might even argue that maybe better access, but that's up for engineering and VDOT to determine.
Would there be adverse impact if we were to act upon this request tonight and they don't reach an agreement? Is that a possibility?
No, I don't see, because the Shepherd property we cannot physically impact him. I mean, he will benefit. He's Zone B2. What we're planning on bringing into him is really people that would utilize his site. So I think it's a win-win.
But if he is denied an entrance, which it appears he would be because of the spacing requirements, where Mr. Ruddy is at, could he answer that one? My concern is that we don't leave him in a position where he can't utilize his property.
No, we need to get his cooperation for the grading along the front of his property before we can put the entrance in at its location proposed. If we can't get that from him,
you can't get approval from VDOT.
We have to find another way into our property. So he's in the driver's seat in a sense. But there are other properties out there that would provide access to this particular property.
But if you can't reach the agreement, then your entrance is a moot point, right? You'll have to move that entrance.
Sure, yes, sir. It's a moot point.
And right, that entrance appears to be at a good location because it's at the high point of that particular section of the roadway.
Well, and my engineer, Mr. Lewis, has met with VDOT, and I think VDOT says that is their preferred location there.
But you're saying you have alternatives if you need to go to them?
There's alternatives, yes, sir.
Okay.
Not preferred. We prefer to try to work through with Mr. Shepherd, and I think that we can do that. I hope we can. We'll hear from him tonight. I guess in a sense, we'll find out.
I guess for staff or Mr. Butler, if what you're saying, you can find other access, well, then the first item under the proffers of the GDP then no longer applies. If what's presented and you have another access, does that then render that first item under the proffers of GDP has to be revisited also? I guess maybe for staff, wouldn't that be true that GDP would have to be reworked at that time?
I think we'll have to come back to you. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I'd really like not to do that.
Well,
I would not like to make you have to do that. That's
right.
what I'm trying to get at.
Thank you. But I would tend to agree with you.
Okay.
But I'd like to leave you gentlemen with this thought that reasonable people can work out reasonable matters. And I think Mr. Shepherd is a reasonable person. It's just his anticipation of when these things should occur. He wants to do them sooner than we're able to do them.
To address your question, we can still provide the roundabout as well as the access to the north and meet the proffers. We would not have to come back. We can still build that. If we move the entrance south 200, 300, 400 feet, we can still make the connection to the Russell 150 that we've proffered. So I don't think moving the entrance renders it moot at all. Ideally, we put the entrance there and we work that out with Mr. Shepherd. But if he doesn't want us to put the entrance there, we're going to have to place it somewhere else. And I still think we can meet all the requirements of the proffers.
Well, you all just gave me a perfect example of not having something in writing. Mr. Butler, your attorney, said one thing and the engineer says another. That's why I really like to see some type of agreement in writing. And I'm just being as honest as I can with you because it's putting the applicant at risk, it's putting the neighbor at risk, and I'm just being as honest with you as I can.
Well, perhaps I should have answered that question, I should have deferred to Mr. Lewis.
But that's still, you proved my point right there.
Well, the one thing I would say is this, I think, and again, your county attorney can advise you on this, I don't think that the board can turn down or either approve zoning application based on private citizens' contracts, basing it on that. The highest and best use of this land is either as it is supposed to be zoned in conformity with your comprehensive plan, or it's not. If you think that this is not a good zoning, then you should turn it down by all means. I would say that to you. But the staff has approved it, Planning Commission has approved it, and all of it points to the direction that it should be approved tonight.
I didn't mean to infer that, Mr. Butler, that it was any of that.
Thank you.
I have not yet. I probably need to discuss with Mr. Williams as far as, I'm not really after that private contract per se, but looking at a rezoning that needs to be built. It needs to have certain things go with it. And as I see it, that can't happen the way this would get approved. So I'm not inferring disapproval of the rezoning.
Yes, sir.
Please don't infer that.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, at a couple of points in the discussion, it seemed to me like if we were acting on it, we were approving it subject to the private agreement being reached. But now what I'm hearing is that is not necessarily the case.
After the public hearing, I was going to have staff go over the submission by Mr. Butler as we go for clarification on what's before us, and what we'll act on or not act on. But I can do it now if you want.
Stand down.
Any other questions? Then let's go to public hearing. This is a public hearing to consider rezoning 03-13 Madison Village submitted by Painter Lewis PLC to rezone 51.26 acres from RA Rural Areas District to 46.26 acres of RP Residential Performance District and 5 acres of B2 General Business District with proffers. Property is located on the west side of Route 522, Front Royal Pike, approximately 1,000 feet south of the intersection of Route 522, Front Royal Pike, and Route 645, Airport Road, and is identified by property identification number 64-A-18 in the Shawnee Magisterial District. If there's anyone here who would like to speak either for or against this rezoning, would you please come forward, give your magisterial district, and limit your comments to 3 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Michael Shepard, and I live in the Shawnee Magisterial District. I'm the adjacent property owner we were just referred to as. I'll stick to my prepared remarks and not talk about any of our negotiations that we've had in the past. My wife and I own 2 lots on B2 adjacent to Madison's project, which is to our south and west, and Russell 150 is to our north. I came before the Planning Commission August 21st when the item was tabled for our discussions to continue, and again on November 6th when it was forwarded to the board. I'm here tonight to inform you of 2 things. First, we have already filed site plans with the county for our project, which, when it's built, would make the connector road from 522 unbuildable. I think that's the issue that's perhaps missed here when we're talking about agreements. With our site plan, that road can't be built. Secondly, Mr. Madison needs grading easements from us for their deceleration lane. In my discussions with VDOT, that's the only place where the road can come in from 522, the connector road. It cannot move because of site distances. At this point in time, we haven't reached any agreement. In the absence of withdrawing our site plan and without grading easements, the board could approve a project whose main connector road is impossible to build, throwing the metaphorical wrench into the infrastructure we all hope to get built and realize one day. Thank you for your time.
Anyone else?
Becky Morrison, Gainsborough District. I just asked the board that if you do consider this Madison Village, that you ask the developer to include in the plan that he will not use any TDRs.
Anyone else? Sheena will close the public hearing. I have a question of staff.
Yes, sir.
Trying to make a reference without trying to sound derogatory, but having dealt with the developers of this project on a previous project when I found out that people interpret language differently, the timing of the proffers began to be a concern to me. If 419 houses are built or units are built on this property, are there any traffic infrastructures? They're not required, right? I know you had a 420 minimum stuck in there, but what happens if it doesn't get to the minimum? What if the project falters? There's no time, there's just a volume trigger.
That specific trigger you talked about was a minimum to get the road connected to the south. And for clarification, just 1 second, that is parcel 20, not 21, so the proffer ultimately would need to make sure that reflects parcel 20. But that is simply the trigger on that number of units.
What does a minimum 420 accomplish?
The minimum number of units?
I think
just
through
in
the Planning Commission, the minimum 420 was requested, or a minimum was, and it was set at 420. What does it accomplish?
It simply accomplishes the number of units, a minimum density to ensure.
The project won't be bonded or anything prior to that, will it? If the project would falter at 200, what happens? Through no fault of the developer, it just goes bust.
Then it doesn't ultimately occur within the actual development phase, but the approval of that would be for ultimately something that builds up to a number consistent with the proffers, the 420 to the maximum density. So a minimum density and a maximum density, the aim of which is to achieve conformance with the comprehensive plan. In the plans that
420
are,
was the minimum. Did I read it wrong?
That's right. The minimum number of units and the maximum number of units?
420. And that was a request for some minimum number to be put in. 420 was put in. I couldn't see what it accomplished. And then my question was on the proffered thing, if the project fell short of that for whatever reasons, I was hoping you could explain to me what it accomplishes.
And again, it achieves the approval of a plan that is, has a minimum density attached to it, consistent with a comprehensive plan. Now, should the project stop at any point, then obviously, yes, the numbers won't be achieved. But at every step along the way, the approvals will be consistent with the comprehensive plan, the approved rezoning, the approved master development plan, and any subdivision plans that are approved. So again, it moves us in the direction of being consistent. The numbers are achieved, the development's achieved.
Either I'm not misunderstanding or you need to straighten me out because it's not connecting here. Maybe I'm not articulating it well enough. I want to know what happens if the project just goes bust.
Then the project
All
stops.
the proffered.
It's just, if I can help, it's like any other project. As you develop, you have to comply with proffers.
The trigger is so high, I can see the project in bad times not making it to the trigger.
In part of the
20 out of 600 and some is pretty far up there.
correct. In part of the planning process, we have a master development plan which will show the dispersion of the housing units. And they'll come through and do their subdivisions. And part of that master plan process will enable us to make sure they are doing the density that they committed to. Now, they may not achieve the 420 right away, but for the whole project over time to develop, we'll make sure the master plan, half the land's not going to be developed if you don't get to your 420.
Last time I dealt with this issue down off Cincinnati Road, one person didn't do one thing because that would have meant them to have to do something else. And so there was a stalemate, and I'm just trying to figure out how to avoid the same situation here, and 420 seemed like a big number.
Right. And I think that the way we get there is on the master plan, we make sure that 420 is only developing half the property. So there's an incentive to develop more than 420 because you've got half your land that hasn't been developed yet. So whether it happens in today's economy or 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, you have that trigger. What the other project you referred to, it didn't have a density issue that we're talking about now. What we want to make sure is at the master plan stage, the density factors are being identified in each phase. So you know that you're going to get the higher density, the 420 to the 600 range. That's part of in staff's vision, that's part of what the master plan can help facilitate that. Because you're right.
I don't feel a lot better, but.
Well, the 420 gave us that bottom number, and on the examples of other projects that we've had out there, there was no bottom. And so it really does move us to that next.
Let me let the applicant give a shot at trying to make me feel better, because I know he feels like I probably attacked him. Does it make sense what I'm worried about?
My name is David Madison, and I am the applicant, and it's good to be in front of you again. I have over a 25-year history in the community of building, laying brick, and having the good fortune of weathering some tough economic times in this community. And where I come from, hard work pays off. And so to be able to be in front of the board is a privilege. I take what I do very seriously, and I put forth a lot of effort and commitment. And to be able to stand up here this evening and try to figure everything out about a development that sometimes, in my case, since the late 90s, and I'm now into 2013, on one particular development that Mr. Schickel referred to, is that I have met all my commitment with roads, but that was not all figured out at the rezonings. What rezoning is giving me the right to have the ability to proceed with the right to develop property. And on the issue of roads and all that goes forward, I feel my past has demonstrated that I do do it, but at sometimes other people may or may not participate in that. So I can't control what other people do. I can control what I do. And so to be able to come up here, and we came up with a 420, I believe, because the county asked us that if this property was for, I believe, a maximum density of, how many, John? 640. They wanted to know if we were going to give you 640, what is the minimum amount that you will build on here for us? And that was based around, I believe, a proffer that had came up from Eric Lawrence and the county of 11,000 some odd dollars per unit. So I had to commit to paying $11,000 a unit for the apartments and 17,000 something for the townhouses. And so during this process, I had to make some decisions on during, the rezoning, is this or is not this not going to be a viable project? Is this going to be something that I could economically withstand and for the long term of not only Frederick?
Did you come up with the 420 for the public road extended to the southern limits before or after the minimum number?
After.
After. So when you picked a 420 minimum, then you put 420 in there?
I believe if I'm understanding the correct question, yes, the answer would be yes. If I'm understanding the question, I think the answer would be yes. And we did that based upon the minimum amount of density that we could place on the project, not the maximum, the minimum, to facilitate the project. We can get more than that, but that's the minimum amount that we will put on there. So
what do you think would happen to you if you didn't build 420? I don't have a bond. I mean, what?
I don't know what the county's position is on that. In the past, I haven't had the misfortune of.
You didn't worry about what would happen to you.
No, because I did what I said so far. I did have to come back in front of you though and figure out how to do a portion of Channing Drive at the time that was not my responsibility at the time, but then became. That's up to interpretation what happened there, but I know I ended up building it.
If I was slightly worried about you walking on me before you build 420 units, what would you tell me to make me feel better?
I've done what I had said in the past.
Okay.
Yeah, but at the same time, I do understand the dilemma of maybe trusting developers in this community. I don't know.
I appreciate your honesty.
Yeah.
I don't mean to sound like an interrogator here.
Yeah,
Trying to seek comfort.
Yeah, well, I am too, and I'm saying I can't move forward with the design of the roads and the design of the pads and everything that's being asked until I get a rezoning, because I don't have anything without the rezoning.
Is the southern road the only one that's hooked on the 420? Is that one? The rest of them got an earlier trigger?
312. If I can, I can answer because I know my project pretty good. To the back, see the R on the residential? The R, everything till the R has to be built in the first phase. It has to be built in order for me to even get the density to recoup the cost of just the road, not counting the proffers.
Okay.
Just the road. And then at that point, there's a break-even point at that point, and then then I move forward from there.
I appreciate your willingness to answer my question.
Okay.
Anybody else have a question?
I have a question on the access and egress. Back to the Mr. Shepherd situation here. Let's assume that doesn't go through, Dave. And I heard him mention something about an acceleration lane and it couldn't happen and so forth. What's plan 2, Mr. Lewis, whatever, if that doesn't work and he doesn't withdraw his plan and I heard you say you all have another location or multiple locations you can use. I heard him say there isn't, so I don't know. Where are we? I'm confused. Are we okay rezoning this and you've got Mr. Shepherd says, I don't want to have anything to do with you, go away, leave me alone, I'm going to build my units over there, do you have ways to get in and out of your property? That VDOT will say is okay.
May I answer some, maybe part of your question? When Mr. Schickel brought up he was involved on Cincinnati Road, we didn't have the bridge figured out. We didn't have other areas of the road structure figured out when the rezoning occurred. All we had figured out, it was a maximum density.
Right.
And so at that point, during the course of the project, things happened. And I would have to feel with what I know about surrounding areas and the Planning Commission's road infrastructure, that this is going to be a viable project, but I cannot have that until I get it rezoned. And then so I'm unfortunately, I can't answer every question at this phase.
I have no problem with the rezoning. I just want to feel comfortable. I want you to feel comfortable that if this doesn't work, that you've got, we've rezoned something that's going to be usable.
This is the ideal place for the entrance.
Okay.
However, you can see that we have more frontage than this.
I do see that.
The problem with the other frontage is the environmental impacts. We have to cross ravines, we have to extend culverts, we've got a major gas transmission line going through there. So there are other options, but we prefer this one. So we're going to work hard to make that work.
I understand.
Other questions? Supervisor Lofton.
Mr. Ruddy, what takes precedence here? If this rezoning is approved under this generalized development plan, and Mr. Shepherd decides to develop his property first, that negates this entrance, which just means that the rezoning doesn't go away. They just have to move their entrance to accommodate VDOT's requirements, right?
There has to be accommodation, yes, for certain. Obviously, we've seen entrance and how it could all work together. Hopefully it does so, but there may be room to move. The question was asked about the generalized development plan, and number one, does that bind you to what we see up here? And there is flexibility, but generally it does bind you to an entrance there on 522 being as part of the first phase. Can that shift north or south a little bit? As we've heard, there's the potential there for that. Can we get additional right-of-way through Route 522? That might be a possibility. But there's obviously a desirable entrance configuration that people have been looking at. They're not there yet. Flexibility could be provided within their generalized development plan and the specific numbers of the profit statement, which identify the entrance. Now the two projects, they're obviously independent projects, and the VDOT approval of the specific entrance for the commercial project or the subdivision design entrance, it's really whatever comes first.
Do you know what action would trigger one developer in favor of the other? In other words, what would Mr. Shepherd have to do to negate the possibility that the entrance as shown here would take place? He's got an approved site plan.
No, he doesn't have an approved site plan.
Did not have it approved.
He has a site plan submitted that doesn't have the approvals necessary at this point for it to move forward. Should that be approved and have an entrance on it that VDOT is agreeable to, ultimately, then he would have the ability to move forward with that. And this project, the rezoning, would have to accommodate that entrance to a greater extent, perhaps, than is there presently.
So it's just a matter of Mr. Shepherd going to VDOT, getting his site plan approved entrances. Once VDOT approves those entrances, that puts him in a position of having to move their entrance.
Again, the GDP and rezoning gives flexibility for it to be moved on this project. Obviously not to come out on 81 or Paper Mill Road, but within the realm there of 522. But if he does move forward and get a site plan approved by the county that includes VDOT's approval, then he would have the ability to move forward with that.
Okay, I just want to make sure each party understood. If Mr. Shepherd moves first, then Mr. Madison has to move in concert with what Mr. Shepherd has got approved, which means I seriously doubt you're going to get an entrance further south to that next parcel, because I can't imagine VDOT allowing a traffic light in that particular location. You had to go further south to get a traffic light up there, to me, because I don't think you'd have sight distance, put a traffic light down at the bottom there if you go a little further south. But anyway,
There
I
are
just want to make sure that each party understood if the agreement isn't reached, who stands where.
There's definitely a good design out there, and hopefully the agreement can be reached at some point.
Gary, you just mentioned access to 522, and this amendment we've been handed says owner must obtain adequate access to public roads as approved by VDOT for the rezoned parcel, but it doesn't specify 522.
I suspect Mr. Butler did that on purpose.
Question, I mean, it's not really a question.
Mr. Butler?
Huh?
Yes, Mr. House. I generalized because it has to be to public roads. It has to have access to public roads. I thought that was implicit in number 4 to begin with. But I just wanted to reiterate the fact that we do need to have public roads. Think about this. The worst case scenario, you can guess it. Madison gets his land rezoned. Now he's going to be taxed at an RP. And if he can't use it, he's going to be paying out a lot of tax dollars to Frederick County. So he's got to make it work. And I think, again, I think reasonable people can sit down and work these differences out. It's just the problem is that when you get under a time constraint and it needs to be done, sometimes you don't always meet those issues.
That's nothing to do with us, really.
Mr. Hess, does that answer your
I
question?
don't want to speak for Supervisor Hess, but I guess indirectly he was asking you, would you have consented to a Route 522 instead of a public highway in the way in which you wrote it? Were you asking that question?
I think that was the essence of my question, yeah.
Oh, let me defer to my engineer who designed this. Is that, do you have a problem with Route 522?
Does he have?
It doesn't.
In order to conform to the generalized development plan, we need to come off 522. And we need to make the connection to the north, and we need to make the connection to the west, and we need to make the connection to the south. The one to the south.
The question is, the lawyer was general. You meant 522. Are you willing to put 522 there, or is it a big issue? I'm
It has
just
to be,
calling
it
for
has to be 520.
clarification.
It has to be 522.
It's only access again.
Yeah.
So I would assume you'd be willing for it to say that.
Yes. Yes.
We can sell them in.
You can tell Ben and I are on the same page on this
Did you
thing.
get your answer?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Other questions? All right. Shawnee? You have the application before you, some changes to the proffer, which I believe are code qualified and may or may not have the words 522 instead of public road, depending on the board's pleasure. I think the concurrence of the applicant, approval, denial, or otherwise.
I guess there's a part of me that wishes there'd have been some success here in getting the adjoining property owners to come to some kind of agreement. And I wasn't trying to embarrass anybody, but it's just that verbal stuff that, you know, it's obvious that verbal things get misconstrued after a while, and what some person thought they heard doesn't turn out to be the way they thought it was going to be. I do appreciate the startup funding for the Property Owners Association. And I think also this first section 4 of the proffer is amended to the owner must obtain adequate access to public roads, i.e. 522 is approved by VDOT for the rezoned parcel. Sometimes the approval by VDOT doesn't do much for me, quite frankly, but that's another issue. And I think I had all intentions of trying to postpone this to maybe get the parties to agree, but that's not up to me to force folks into engineering and attorney fees and so forth and so on. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to place a motion out for approval of rezoning 0313 Madison Village submitted by Painter and Lewis PLC with the attached amendment to proffers as we were presented, with the addition of where it says to public roads.
I can get you to pause a minute. Mr. Lawrence, Mr. Williams, this paper's not signed. Does it meet muster in that regard? Or you get it signed after the fact, or how does it work? I know it qualifies by, I think, definition, but what's the way in which these things are done? Public presentation, public acknowledgement?
I guess my suggestion would be if we all heard the offer, if you accept the offer, then I'll get them to sign this paperwork.
Okay.
Formalize
And
it.
that little 522 change is not important? Okay. Then go ahead, sir. I just want to make sure I knew where we were here.
Well, I think I made that motion then,
Okay, we have a
subject to
motion.
these conditions.
We have a second. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Lofton.
Not going to beat it. I think both parties going into this with their eyes wide open as to what happens with whoever moves first. So I'm okay with that.
Any other discussion? Hearing none. Supervisor Hess.
Aye.
Supervisor Collins.
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher.
Aye.
Supervisor DeHaven.
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton.
Aye.
Supervisor Wells.
Aye.
Chairman's aye. Motion passes. Next is the rezoning application 06-13, proffer revision. It's of Silver Lake LLC. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, sir. Members of the board, this is a minor proffer revision request to rezoning 0109, which was the Silver Lake project that was rezoned, of course, back in 2009. At that time, 370 acres were rezoned from rural areas to B2, which is the Business General and Medical Support District with proffers, of course, to support the National Lutheran Home on the Medical Support District portion, which, of course, is recently opened and doing quite well. This is within the Gainsborough Magisterial District. On the screen to your left is the location map, which identifies the B2 and the MS portion, and we can see, of course, National Lutheran Boulevard and the existing streets that are in there to support the National Lutheran Home. This very simple request relates to the relocation of the fire and rescue site. The site was provided initially for a new fire and rescue facility and support facilities on Route 50. It has been relocated to Corporate Place Drive near the intersection of National Lutheran Boulevard. Of course, the road National Lutheran Boulevard is in today. The generalized development plan has been modified. It's on the screen to your left. And if I could just highlight very, very briefly for you, the new fire and rescue site is in this location here. Previously, it fronted on Route 50 in that location. That is, in essence, the scope of the change, the substance of the change for this rezoning application. You will note that throughout the proffers, this particular the red line version, there are a variety of edits to address current road names and things of that nature. There is a date change, a date certain for the fire and rescue site of April 21st, 2014, as opposed to the 4 years from date of approval of the initial rezoning. That is in essence the same date. And one minor modification dealing with some landscaping on National Lutheran Boulevard. Again, the fire and rescue site is the meat and potatoes of this rezoning application. The revised proffer, which is dated November the 4th, reflects that correctly. The Planning Commission recommended approval at their last meeting, and we're seeking the Board of Supervisors' decision here this evening. This is not a public hearing item. It's a minor proffer revision, and therefore we don't have to go through the public hearing process. Mr. Evan Wyatt is here this evening representing the application, should you have any questions of him, and I'd be happy to answer any if you have any.
Questions to staff? Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
The applicant wish to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm Evan Wyatt with Greenway Engineering. The only thing I'd add to Mike's staff report, of course, he mentioned the fact that Lutheran Home Boulevard is in place up to this location. And with that, of course, it's a signalized intersection on Route 50. When the fire station was previously proposed to come out on Trader Drive, the traffic signal was proffered to have preemption to allow for the fire trucks to stop traffic on 50 when they were exiting. The signal that's in place with Lutheran Boulevard does not have that. The proffer's been amended to amend that signal to give it preemption capability. Otherwise, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
With your pointer, where the fire hall was, where the fire hall will be?
The original proffer had the fire site generally in this location, which would require Trader Drive to be constructed up to about this point to serve.
And will be?
I'm sorry, it's being proposed in this location right here.
Questions?
Yes. Mr. Wyatt, you have the agreement from the Fire and Rescue Company for the relocation? Yes. Public Works has been working with them on the site plan element. They've looked at the site, both Public Works and the fire chief representing Round Hill. Everybody seems very pleased with the site, and they've already moved forward with starting the conceptual design of this location. The idea is to have the site plan approved by the end of January, put it out for competitive bid for construction. So yes, they're happy with the location.
Yes, I'm on Public Works, and we've worked on it. This is a much better site. Fire company's 100% behind it. It just works out. It works out good for both. It's much better, but it's a much better site for the fire company.
Assuming this is approved, I appreciate the supervisor from Back Creek giving up a fire station and adding one to the Gainsborough district.
You're welcome.
Okay, any questions before we call for a motion? This is Gainsborough.
I'd like to move this proposal be approved.
All right, we have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second by Supervisor Collins. Discussion. Hearing none. Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor DeHaven?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher? Aye. Supervisor Collins?
Aye.
Supervisor Hess?
Aye.
Chairman votes aye, and the motion passes. The rezoning application is approved. Now we have a revised master development plan. The town's at Tasker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As you stated, this is a revised master plan for the towns at Tasker. This was presented to you at your November meeting with really half the number of units that you're seeing tonight. We're bringing this back forward to the board just based on the TDR ordinance revisions that were approved at your November meeting for the density calculator. So what's before you tonight is the exact same layout, same entrances. The only difference is the unit number is now 81 units, so it's the full build-out for the townhouse development. So this is just presented to you as an informational item. I'd be glad to take any questions you may have, and the applicant is represented tonight by Mr. Ramaslowski. Thank you.
Questions of staff? I don't hear any.
Thank you.
You said the applicant did? Did you wish to speak? Questions? Thanks, sir. If there are no questions, then this is an item for information only. And we'll move on to request for a pump and haul permit. Your favorite. Is that you?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Again, thank you. This is a pump and haul request for 186 Star Tannery Road. Now, this property contains 2 dwelling units, and the request is for the smaller one-bedroom structure, which if I can direct you to the map on to your left, it is the structure that is circled in yellow. Now, the health system for both of the structures, which is the larger structure as well as the smaller structure, were both installed in '96. However, the system for the smaller existing structure was not installed properly. Now, the Health Department determined that the existing system is not functional and it cannot be repaired. And also, there is not adequate area to establish a new system. I would also note that included in your agenda were the property owner's requests for off-site easements, and they were not successful in that. So tonight, we're seeking a decision from the board on this request in Pump and Hall. I would be glad to answer any questions that you may have, and the property owner and their representatives are here tonight as well. Thank you.
Questions to staff? Did the property owner wish to speak?
Alternative system.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Board. I'm here with Andrew Page, and I'm from Martin Septic Service. And we was out there with the Health Department. We did all the things we could possibly to try to get a site to put a septic system in. But there's no alternative systems or nothing they can put in there. And the system that's in there now, I went out to inspect because he's selling the property, and whoever installed it for him installed the one he's got at his other house, just put a 275-gallon tank in the ground with a line going off of it. And there's no other system he can put in there other than a pump and haul.
Did this property owner oversee and pay for the original system that was improperly installed, or did he buy it not knowing that it was like that?
No, he paid for the system to be installed, thinking it was inspected and everything.
He got hoodwinked.
Yes, and he had the same guy put his system into his house he has there too, the other house, and the neighbor's house. Well, they got permits on all those. When he went to pull the permits on all these, this one never existed. So he just kind of got him on this one.
Still in business?
No, sir.
Chairman, if I may, maybe you know the answer to this, and I'm trying to make sure I understand this. The accessory structure had its own sewage disposal system, which now we know was not installed properly and cannot be installed. But the main structure, built in 1996, does have its own sewage disposal system, its own septic field? Or
yes,
not?
it has its own septic field and everything, and we inspected that, and everything's to codes and everything on that. But this one here, there isn't nothing to it.
So that short distance, the soil changes that dramatically that you can get a septic system for one house but not the other. This is all one parcel of land, right?
Right. But just the requirements today, from the way they used to be, you just can't get anything. It's all alternative, and they can't even find an alternative for this system.
So we're talking about a pump and haul for the accessory structure, not the primary structure.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Just want to make sure I was clear on that. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thanks, sir. I got one more question for staff. I don't like these things. If it were to be denied, what would it mean to the property owner? Nobody could live in that accessory house?
It wouldn't have a health system, so it wouldn't have it wouldn't have the ability for plumbing.
What was that last part? It's already plumbed.
It's plumbed with a system that's not adequate, so the health department would then have to deal with the
Somebody keep
issue.
people from living in it?
The health department would have to treat it as a violation.
Okay. That's the consequences of a denial?
Yes.
Okay, at this point in time?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, any question of connecting this to the functioning septic system?
I did talk to the health department about that, and it's not sized. The existing system for the main house isn't large enough to accommodate adding the smaller structure.
Other questions? Thanks.
Thank you.
Back Creek, I guess.
Yes, sir. Now that it's clear in my mind, kind of hate to see the structure taken away from the owner, especially since he thought that they had actually paid for and gotten the required system. So I would move to approve the request for the pump and haul permit for 186 Star Tannery Road.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion and a second for approval. I wasn't sure what I was going to do and wanted to vote no, but we'll probably vote yes, but strictly with the belief that the property owner was defrauded. If I ever found out that the property owner played any role in the inadequacy of the system and then came in and asked us to fix it, there's nothing I could do about it, but it would not be why I cast the vote I cast tonight. It's because I believe the property owner was defrauded. So I don't know about the rest of you, but discussion? Hearing none. Supervisor Hess?
Aye.
Supervisor Collins?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor DeHaven?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Chairman votes aye, and the pump and haul permit is approved. Board liaison reports, are there any? Citizen comments, is there anyone here who would like to address the board on any subject? If so, please come forward, give your name, magisterial district, limit your comments to 3 minutes, please.
Jay March, Gainesboro District. I know we're anxiously waiting to hear the word from Chuck DeHaven to get us out of here, but I did want to say one more thing. I thank you very much for letting me run into my red light here on my comments, but I didn't get all my points quite out. And one thing I'd like to mention is tonight, I heard I caught the tail end of a great presentation on the middle school. I heard a lot of good detail on the Frederick Winchester Service Authority, and I heard a lot of good back and forth on the Madison Village project. What I don't hear is this transparency in this discussion on the county building. And I think it's this board has the authority to provide the transparency on this project. And I think you should, just for this reason, because the citizens deserve to hear this. This needs to be an open discussion item, and that's what we should have here. I took a look at a couple other things. Office property in the Winchester, Frederick County area, days on the market, near 240 days. Prices continually dropping from 190 square feet down to 140 square feet. Should the county be building more? Should subsidizing building more, especially with the current building getting ready to be paid for in December 2014? We heard price tags on the middle school. We heard price tags on the service authority. And like you said, it might not be a direct pull out of my wallet from the county, but I am a taxpayer and it is a pull from me. And so I'm not sure that now is the right time to be building a new county building. I just don't think, looking at this needs assessment, it's a need. And I would just reiterate, take this needs assessment that was done and use it as a starting point and put it back into the hands of the Planning Commission and the comprehensive plans and do it the correct way and get further bids and take a look at it. There's no need to hurry. There's no need to hurry. So I appreciate the time tonight, and I look forward to hearing from Mr. DeHaven.
Anyone else? Board of Supervisors comments.
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Fisher.
I'm going to have to say something. I'm not sure which meeting Mr. Martz attended with Public Works, but I thought at Public Works, a lot of items were brought up. There was no use beating a dead dog over them. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of kitchenettes. There's a whole bunch of conference rooms. I believe the chair even commented that, yes, the facility that's being proposed would house the school administration and the county administration, but with some really close scrutiny would go underneath 150,000 square feet. So I think Public Works dealt with this as directed by the board to see if the adequacy of what was proposed at 150,000 square feet would work. I believe what we sent to you is that yes, it will work, and it's at the program phase, which is at the very beginning. I don't see where there's any rush to judgment of anything on this. I haven't been pushed by anybody. I think Public Works did what they should have done. Mr. Wagner's comments were well taken as far as the duplication of things. When you go through this programming phase, it's not unusual to have all this duplication, but it easily showed that the proposed building could easily house what we're talking about. Whether we ever get there or not, I'm sure it'll be discussed at some point. But I just thought I would clarify some of those points that they were brought up.
I don't know about any other board members, but I never never thought that the study was done for any other purpose than to see what was proposed to us, whether it would work space-wise or not. It didn't have any other purpose. So if anybody else had a different opinion, I'm not sure where the other thoughts come from. Other board comments?
Chairman, move we adjourn.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Supervisor Collins. All those in favor, aye? Aye. No.